Welcome back to another Python tutorial. Sorry, I've been away for a very long time, but moving and remodeling are not necessarily the quickest things on the planet, and they're still in the process, which is always fun and stressful. Alrighty, so what are we covering today? Well, we're going to keep talking about web scraping the SEC. I know this is a popular topic for a lot of different people. And in particular, what we are now going to talk about is how to parse the document filings. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, for example, we know that certain filings could be made up of 10Ks, 8Ks, whatever they need to be. And a lot of times we want to get the text outside of those, or sorry, inside those particular documents. Some of that text is really easy to get. Other forms of that text is not so easy to get. Now, this is kind of like a three-part series if you want to think about it, because what I'm first going to show you do is how to parse just the filing documents as a whole. And more particularly, we're going to be talking about the new type of filings, because there's kind of like two different categories. There are some that come before 2009 and then some that come after. The ones before 2009 are a pain to parse, and they're not very structured in the form of the HTML. The ones after 2009 are much more structured, so you'll find that the HTML can be leveraged in lots of different ways in order to get the information that you need. And then the final group is the ones that have the XBRL files that go along with them. In those situations, we can actually get most of the information from each document from those files. Now, there are certain types of text that might not exist in those files, so we would technically have to resort to the strategy that I'm going to show you in this series, but I will be covering that topic down the road just because that to me is probably the easiest and it gives us the most control as to getting the most granular type of data. Now, first thing with this particular series is we do have to use a couple different libraries. And so the first one is the regular expression library. This will come in handy when we have to normalize some of our text. We're also going to be making a request because obviously our document does exist in the SEC server. So we have to request that document from the server. We do have to also, again, normalize our text, and we're going to be using the Unicode data library in order to do that. This makes that process a lot easier. And then along with this library, we basically will get very clean text that you can then do further analysis on. And then naturally, because this is HTML, we will be using Beautiful Soup. Now, to kind of lay out how this video will kind of proceed, certain information like right here, I am going to be having populated beforehand, and I'll just kind of be going over how these function works and what they're supposed to be doing. The other thing I do want to let people know is the way I'm about to show you, it might not necessarily be the fastest way, but there's a very particular reason I'm showing you the way that I'm showing you. The reason why is I want to make sure that you understand the process and the steps that you need to take in order to kind of get to this, what I would call an organized document that you can easily navigate to each different part, get the pieces that you need, and then store those pieces of information in the same dictionary that we're going to create. This way, it's really easy to jump around, and more importantly, the amount of information that you have to parse at any given time is going to be very minimal, and so you're going to be able to leverage certain patterns inside the data that will hopefully allow you to get some of the information that you want and very specific pieces of information. So let me first kind of just show you the document that we're going to be parsing. So the first thing is naturally, like in previous videos, we usually get to these particular directories and we'll start going through maybe getting the documents. You know, people do different things, but what you'll see here is you'll see that text file, right? So the text file is basically everything that you're seeing in this directory, but it's in text file format. Now, if you were to open this particular text file, you would just see a bunch of HTML code. Now, this HTML code, while it might just seem like a glob of information, it is actually structured. And it's structured in a couple different ways. The first thing that you'll notice at the top is that there's this SEC document tag. This is kind of the outer level. This is basically as high as you can go up in this particular text file. This contains every single SEC document that is provided in the text file. You will then see the SEC header tag. This contains different information about this particular filing. So for example, information on the filer, the company data, filing values, address stuff, all that kind of fun stuff. And then things like the submission type, public document count, and other information like that. This is a pain to parse. I don't necessarily recommend you parsing it. I'll kind of show you how to grab it and then just store it away for later use. But if you honestly had to get most of the information from this, I mean, you could do it, but I think for the most part, there's nothing really in here that you can't get from somewhere else. And I think I would rather get it from those other sources. Okay, so once you've gone through that, you've got your SEC document, you've got your SEC header. Now comes the important part. Then you have these document tags. And each document tag is preceded by a type, a sequence, a file name, and a description, and then finally a text. So you will have multiple document tags inside this text file. Each document tag represents one of the documents that you're seeing in the directory, along with the type, the sequence, so the order in which you see that particular document, the file name, the description, and then inside this text tag is all the HTML code. So if you want to parse that particular document, you basically can grab all this information. I mean, I'm going to show you how to do that. And then you just grab all the HTML code, which you can then parse further. Now, the HTML code, there's a bunch of it. And so from this kind of visual standpoint, it's really hard to see if there's any kind of patterns that we can leverage, if there's really anything we can do to make this a little bit more structured. But you know, just me doing this enough times, I've kind of had the opportunity to explore different ways of how to look at this. But if you go to your directory and you were to go to the indexed HTML link provided here, it'll take you to this page. Now, this is if you had done like a regular Edgar query like I've shown you in other videos. But if you click each one of these document links that are provided in the table below, it'll take you to an HTML version of that particular document. Now, more importantly, it's the HTML code that you're seeing in this document. Now you might be saying, why does that matter? I mean, it's the same thing. Here, it's a lot easier to see patterns. Here, it's going to be impossible to see patterns. Just telling you. What I noticed from these particular HTML documents, the ones where I can actually see the HTML in action, is that there is structure behind this. There are pages. So a document can be split into multiple pages. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to take this document and we're going to split it along those pages. What that will allow us to do is make basically our parsing much more granular. So instead of having to search the entire document for a particular word or sequence or something along that nature, which potentially could return hundreds of results, what we could then do is do a search across a particular page. So this is going to allow you to do things like, hey, I want to see what the title is on this particular page. It's easier to do that if you're looking at it from a page level than from a document level. And more importantly, this provides us some structure that we can leverage down the road. So while we're going to be parsing this, it definitely does pay to actually look at the HTML version, because from here you can start seeing patterns like, oh, there's tables. Oh, the title seems to be centered. Oh, and it seems to be bolded. These are all little patterns that you can leverage when you're scraping to get very specific portions of the page that you're looking for. And in certain cases, you'll even see that, you know, there's more additional stuff. Like you can get hyperlinks that take you to certain portions of the page. So you can leverage those hyperlinks to really give you some context as to what page you're on and what's supposed to be in that particular page. That's really an important part, is having the context around the document that you're looking at. If you don't know what document you're looking at, or you don't know necessarily what's on the page, it's really hard to make your parsing very specific because you don't really have the context behind it in order to do it. So that's really high level what we're going to be trying to do, is we're going to be trying to take this HTML text file and we're going to try to break it into its different parts, so into its different documents, and then we're going to take each document and then break that down even further into individual pages. And once it's in those pages, then we'll go through the process of cleaning the data and getting very specific tags from the HTML code. So that way you can infer the context around each page/document. So if that sounded like a lot, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to, but there is just a lot of moving parts here. Now, obviously, like I do in most other videos, I will be providing a PDF file so that way you can see how I'm approaching it, and that way if you get lost during the video, you can always just refer to that document as well. Now, the other big thing I do want to mention, like I said before, is this isn't going to be the fastest way. I will be posting more quote unquote optimized code on GitHub, but it definitely pays to look at it this way first, because otherwise you're going to look at that code and be like, whoa, he's doing like 5 different steps at once, and why is he doing it that, and then takes that one and then meshes it with this one. It's a lot harder to kind of understand what's going on inside that particular document. So that's just an FYI to everybody that there is some kind of logic behind this, and so don't be confused if it seems like, well, why is he doing it like this if he could just do that particular step in another loop. So first things first is we are going to import our libraries. The first function that we do encounter is going to be used for text normalization. When we do extract that text from each page, it's not going to be clean. It's going to be very messy. There's going to be certain characters that haven't been encoded properly or decoded properly, and what we have to do is normalize that text so that way we don't have these messy characters laying around. Now, we are going to be using the Unicode data library. However, that's not going to work for every single character that we encounter. So what I did is I did some research and realized that we're going to have to leverage this function that I found on Stack Overflow that basically decodes the text that we're going to pass through, but it's going to decode it for the Windows 1252 characters. And so these are things like quotation marks and other things along that nature. Unfortunately, we have to decode it a very particular way in order to actually see the text the way it was intended to be seen. So all that function does is just decodes it and makes it where it's clean at the end of the day. Okay, so from here, let's grab the actual document content. So this is just the URL link to the text file that I have up here. Did I already close it? Of course I closed it. That I have right here. So this is all the HTML code that belongs across all the different documents. So I'm simply defining the URL to that particular text file. Once we're here, it's going to be really simple. So we're going to grab the response once we get it. And so we'll call it response. That will equal request.get. And then we're just going to get that new HTML text URL. And then from here, we do need to parse the response. So this is passing it through the beautiful soup object. In this case, I will be using LXML. It seems to work a little bit better than doing traditional HTML, but later in the video, of course, to make things confusing, I'm going to be going back to HTML, and I'll explain that once we get there. So traditionally, we just call it soup, so we call beautiful soup. We pass through our response.content, so anything that's not found on the page, it's just going to pass it through the beautiful soup parser, and then we need to specify the parser, so it's LXML. And then from here, let me move my notes. Alrighty, we should be good. Okay, perfect. So no issues. I'm not going to, unfortunately, print the soup because, first of all, I don't think Jupyter Notebook can handle all the text. I tend to get errors when I do that. But from this point, you can just assume that we have the content. Okay, so when it comes to organizing all this information, I am assuming that a lot of you are going to be wanting to use this strategy across multiple filings. So in other words, you might want to go down a company's list of filings, grab all their content, and start parsing it, organizing it, and all different things like that. So because I'm assuming that, I'm going to write my dictionary a very particular way. So we're going to define a new dictionary that will house all of our filings. And so we'll just call it master filings dictionary. Of course, it will equal a dictionary. This dictionary will need a key that is unique across all filings. Well, lucky for us, we do have a key that we can use. This is I think it's the accession number. something like that. This is something that is unique to each filing. So if you were to type this in, it would bring you to that particular filing. So I like using that as the key just because it seems to be something that is unique, and basically it's unique to each filing. So define a unique key for each filing. So that tends to be working as the best. Okay, so now that we have defined our key, what's going to be inside this particular dictionary? Well, what we'll do is we'll take the master filings dictionary, we will pass through our key, and then from here, what's going to be inside that dictionary? Well, it's going to be another dictionary. So this is going to be very nested by the end of the day. So this will be another dictionary, and what this is going to be housing is all of the filing documents and the SEC header content. So even though I'm not going to be parsing the SEC header content, I do want to store it in there where if down the road I have to parse it for some reason, it's already inside of our dictionary. So what we'll do is we'll we'll add the key to the dictionary and add a new level. New level, it's really just new dictionary. Okay, so from here, I'm going to take that, and this is going to be broken into two different components. The first one is going to be the SEC header content, and that will, for right now, equal nothing. Well, I think it's nothing. Is it this one? Yeah, we'll do it like that for right now. And then the next one will be the filing documents. So this, again, will also be another dictionary. For right now, though, I am going to just have it set equal to none, and I'll explain that down the road once we get there. So add the next levels. And really, again, this is just having a place for the header content and the filing documents. I made the header content as a dictionary because I'm assuming some people are going to want to parse it. And so what you'll really do is have another set of keys in that dictionary. One is for the code itself, and the next one is for the quote-unquote parsed version. So from here, we should be good. So I just go on to the next one. I'll do this section right next, and then I'm going to cut the video. And then in the next video, we'll start going over the documents. So the first thing is grab the SEC header document. And so we'll just call it SEC header tag. This will equal soup.find. In order to find this particular tag, it's going to be SEC header. And if you want to see how it looks like, in this case, I can show you. This is how it pops up to you. Now, if you wanted to just do a straight get text, this is how it would look if you got the text. It's very messy, but there is, again, some kind of pattern you can leverage. So for example, there's tabs, there's new lines, things along that nature. So I would imagine that if you probably replace most of that, you would be pretty close to some relatively clean text. It's not going to be perfect, but then you could maybe do some splitting along that nature. For example, maybe you could split along a colon, for example. That probably would be your best bet if I had to put money on it. Okay, so that's going to grab the SEC header content. I don't want just the text, I want all the code. So in this case, forget about the get text. So what we'll do is we'll store the SEC header content inside the dictionary. Okay, and so what we'll do is we will grab this one, and it would be SEC header code, and then this would just be the SEC header tag. Again, if you wanted to, you could have like another one that's like SEC header text, and then that would equal the SEC header tag after you had called the get text. Now, I will just keep it up here so that way you guys can keep seeing it if you need to. But from here, you've already got the first portion of the document, the SEC filing document, inside of your dictionary. So if you were to go to the next one, and if you were just to, again, high level, just put this out there, you would see there is some kind of content. So you have your filing number and you have the content for that particular filing. In this case, it's just the SEC header content. Okay, so with that being said, I am going to close out the video. I would say at this point, if you kind of have any questions about how I'm organizing things or maybe how the document itself is laid out, please leave those questions down in the comments below. And as always, I'll try to get back to you. I'm aware it might be a little bit of a confusing topic just because there's, like I said, a lot of different moving parts, but I'm going to try to make it as organized as possible. And then also, if you could, please make sure to like the video. We always appreciate the support. And if you're not already, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so that way you get regular updates as we release new videos. So thank you again for watching, everybody. Next video, we'll start parsing the documents.